Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, I've got Dennis Torres joining me. Dennis is an author. He's a man who has held 64 jobs in his life, incredible experiences, everything from fighting in Vietnam to being a professor at Pepperdine University to managing real estate companies, dairy farms, all huge experiences. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about critical thinking. We're going to talk about choices that you make. We're going to talk about building wealth. And we're going to talk about people he knows who have lived their whole lives making minimum wage, who created and built up wealth of over $1 million. And you can too. This is all about finding better. Here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life experiences of people who have been there and done that in finding better in their own lives in all different kinds of things. And so, a lot of times, learning from others can be the best path to success, not only to be successful and get and live a better life, but to avoid failure. Sometimes we can learn from people that way as well. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest today. His name is Dennis Torres, and this is the first time we're meeting. He was referred to me because of his background, because of his experiences, and I am super looking forward to meeting with him. Now, just to give you a little bit of his background, first of all, he's coming to us from Malibu. And as you know, the Malibu fires and the Pacific Palisades fires. Fortunately, as you can see in where he is, his house survived. But just to let you know, his internet connection is kind of spotty, so we may have some disconnects every once in a while. So please bear through us, bear with us. But just want to let you know that could happen. So with that, he is a man with so much experience. He's held 64 different jobs and careers. He fought in Vietnam. He was a big rig driver. He was a dairy farmer. He was a commercial pilot, a mediator and arbitrator of litigated cases. He ran a successful real estate business, and he's a retired professor from Pepperdine University. And at Pepperdine, he taught an MBA course about acquiring wealth, power, and success, which is great because we're all interested in acquiring wealth, power, and success in some level. Um, but here's the catch: acquiring those things morally and ethically. And so that's the part that said to me, wow, I want to get to know this guy. And he's obviously done very well for himself because he's sitting in a house in Malibu, California. So, Dennis, welcome to Finding Better. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to meet you and your audience and have the opportunity to get to know each other.
Yeah, this is amazing. So 64 jobs. I presume that they weren't sometimes you had multiple jobs at the same time. Otherwise, you'd be over 200 years old.
That's correct. Yeah. In fact, when I was at mine for 30 years, I was a mediator and arbitrator during that time, arbitrated for a national organization and mediated over 1,000 cases, litigated cases. These are cases that people were involved in lawsuits. In fact, I just finished, soon to be published in another week or two, a book about that experience called In Search of Blue Sky. The theme of that is why we fight and how we can stop.
How we fight and how we can stop. Okay, interesting. Interesting. There's a lot that goes behind that. But going back to your arbitrator part of your life, um, I'm sure that arbitrating hundreds of cases, you saw some really cool stuff and some really bad stuff. And I'm sure you met some really good people and some really bad people. So, did that part of your experience shape the way that you've the things that you've been teaching people and how you've lived your life?
Absolutely. In fact, I got into teaching because I saw a more practical, pragmatic need for helping students launch their lives and live their lives. And that was my motivation. I didn't need the extra work, okay, because I was a
Yeah.
pretty busy person. But I had my own thoughts about academics, and I wanted to be more pragmatic and more about how you can live your life rather than just subject matters of great books
Right.
or that
Right.
type of thing.
One of a good friend of mine and I got in a fight, not a fight, but a heated argument one day. And finally, I asked him. I said, "David, do you want my opinion or not?" And he says, "No." And I said, "Well, that's kind of rude." And he says, "No, John, listen, I could care less about your opinion, but I'll listen to your experiences all day long." And so I love how you want to take a more pragmatic approach to teaching in your university classes, because one of my biggest frustrations is that a lot of professors don't have real life experience, and but you obviously do.
Yeah. Yeah, they asked me to teach. So the first course I taught, and I developed my own courses, was called Negotiation and Resolution of Business Disputes. And then I taught one on international finance, where I took the students to Washington, D.C. and to New York. In New York, we visited Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse and a lot of the big houses, got into the boardrooms and got good experiences. And then we went to Washington, D.C., and we went to the World Bank and the IMF and um, the International Chamber of Commerce. And we got into the Capitol, sat in committee meetings at the Capitol, met the senators and congressmen. So that was practical and very popular. And then they asked me to teach a course in ethics. So because we didn't have a course in ethics at the business school, so I wrote to professors at different colleges and asked them what their syllabus is, if they would share them, what books they had. And then I did my own research. And I found that the general feeling was by the time a student reached graduate school level, they had been exposed to right and wrong, and teaching them again what's right and what's wrong was not going to be effective. So I
Okay, so
developed
so
my. Go
just
ahead.
real quick. Now, when you
Yeah.
say when students have reached the graduate school level, okay, um, uh, knowing right and wrong is something that everybody learns in their own way,
Correct.
right? I mean, it's not what you teach is not just limited to graduate school students, is what I'm
Correct.
saying, right?
But it's also very cultural. What is right in
Right.
one culture may not be not right in the
Absolutely.
other culture.
So
Okay. And
this
so
applies to everybody, right? Not
yes,
just graduate students. Yeah. Okay.
exactly. And about 50% of my students each semester were international. They came from
Hmm.
other countries, largely from China and India, but all over the world. Many African countries, of course,
Sure.
Korea, Saudi Arabia. And so their cultures are, again, what was right for in one culture is considered wrong in another culture. And of course, they had different religions, different upbringing. And so just to go and parrot what's right and what's wrong, I think it wouldn't give a good practical message to the students.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So
it's
I
not the same for everybody. Got it.
yeah, so I
Yep.
approached it very differently. And of course, they all wanted, as you said earlier, everybody wanted to become a wealthy and successful and everything. So that was part of my draw to have them come in here. So I approached the ethics question a little differently. And that was that for every action that you take in life, there's a consequence, and that consequence is built into the action. So when you choose the action, you're also choosing the consequence. And so your life is a reflection of your choices in that regard. And the choices aren't right or wrong. It's like in physics. For every action, there's a reaction somewhere, and it's not right or wrong. It just is. Okay. So you can design your experience in life by the decisions you make. and it's not right or wrong, but you're choosing the consequence when you choose make the decision. So that was the approach.
So let me just that was really interesting because I always tell people that the product of your life in the future is going to be, or your life in the future is going to be the product of the choices and decisions that you make today, right?
Yeah,
And and
exactly.
but I've never heard it said the way that you said it. I always tell people you can choose your actions. But what you just also said is that as you choose your actions, you are choosing your consequences, right? So,
Correct.
folks, listen to this. Listen, this is amazing. As you are choosing as you're making your choices, you're choosing your consequences. Stew on that for a little bit, okay? And just write that down, because that alone may cause a change in how you make choices. So thank you, Dennis. That was awesome.
And Pepperdine is a Christian based university, and so
Hmm.
I would also say to get their attention and to emphasize in the first day of classes, I don't believe there's such a thing as right or wrong in the universe. There's only actions and consequences. And of course, each semester I always got the same astonishment coming from the student body. And remember, these are graduate students, they're not
Hmm.
the high school people
Right,
extended.
right.
So, and they're from all over the world, which I love, the different cultures and experiences. So they would say, Professor, definitely there's right or wrong. And I said, well, name something that's wrong. Okay. And I was ready for this because I taught for many years. And the first thing they always said, well, killing is wrong.
Yeah,
And I
I would imagine that would be the number one answer for 99% of people. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, well, geez, the government sent me to Vietnam to kill, and they said it was right. And they said, well, those were bad people. And I said, well, they thought
Yikes.
I thought I was a bad person. They didn't come to California there and start killing my family. I came over there. So again, my approach to teaching and my books are to provoke thought, not to tell people what's right or wrong, but to provoke thought. Let them make the decisions themselves, but I want to think about these things. And that was how the course began each semester. Get to think about this. So we would cover all subjects. For instance, some people say, well, child labor is wrong. Well, then some of my students from India and China say, well, what would you want us to do? Have those kids starve to death? That we
Right,
give them
right.
jobs? Okay. And then we'd say,
Yeah,
well, some people say, I would say, well, what do you think about eating dogs? And of course, the people that grew up in America say, oh, that's terrible there. But
right.
and some of the Asian students will say, well, these are not really pets; these are mongrel dogs. And then I had a surprise one semester. I had a student from Switzerland and said, Professor, the dirty secret in Switzerland is some Swiss people eat dogs for Christmas. I was shocked because we look at Switzerland as a Western culture
Right.
that has similarity to ours, and here they're eating dogs. I actually Googled it, and it's true. Okay,
Wow.
uh, so uh, we would, and then I would say, well, how about eating cows? Okay. And they said, well, like McDonald's hamburgers. You like McDonald's? You like hamburgers? I said, well, the Hindu student next to you there, he thinks that's bad. Okay. Cows are
Right,
sacred.
right.
And again, it's to provoke thought. I'm not telling them how to live. Okay. I'm just saying that every decision you make has built into it an inescapable consequence.
Right.
Okay. And we would get into business and business problems that they would have to solve using the same basis of consequences for actions.
That is so interesting. That is so interesting because, as we started this conversation, a lot of these things are cultural, right? And a lot of these things, I mean, It's been remarkable, talking to people on this podcast, because I think one of the most powerful things I've been learning and we've been talking about is how all of us have, none of us have the same stuff stuck in our heads. None of us, right?
Right.
We've all had different parents, we've all lived in different neighborhoods, we've all had different friends, and every single one of those people and experiences have shaped us. And
Yes.
I will tell you that as a parent, um, I just thank God every day that my kids are far better parents than I ever was. Um, you know, I mean, and it wasn't that I was a bad parent on purpose. We make mistakes, and we plant shit in our kids' heads that is good, but the shit part is really bad. Um, Sometimes unknowingly. And so my point is that I love the approach that you're taking, and how you provoke thought, because and I would imagine that every student in your class was thinking about things differently too.
Yes, absolutely. You know, we would cover problems like, again, it's to provoke thought. It's not to tell people what's right or wrong.
Right.
You know, I would talk about and we did get into the rich, how to have make money and all that stuff, which if you want to talk about, I will. But to stick
Yeah.
with this,
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, there was we discussed this too as a problem in the class. There was an anthropologist from the University of Pennsylvania who studied a tribe in the Amazon. And he lived with these people for many years while he would go back and forth. He would live with them for many years to write about them. And during his experience with that tribe, and this was a tribe that had zero contact with the outside world. And by the way, I lived in the Amazon too, but that's another story. So they had no roads, no communication. They ate insects and tarantulas. So the he had become almost like a member of the tribe. He had been there so long, and the chief of the tribe saw that he was not married, and he said you should marry one of our ladies. So he married one, and by the way, the tribe was so divorced from our world that they didn't have a accounting system above two. So their counting system is one, two, and many. Okay, so after two came
Okay.
many, but he was pledged to a gal that was uh, like 8, 9, or 10 or 12 years old, and he ultimately married her and had a child, and then he brought his wife and child back to Pennsylvania, where he was teaching, to live. The wife didn't like living there in Pennsylvania after this, being grown up there. So she went back to her tribe, but the son stayed there. And he became just like everybody else here in this country that was growing up. He might as well have been born here because he
Yeah.
was an infant when he came there. So uh, the time came where some of the colleagues and people, when they learned of this man's work, they called him a pedophile because he married somebody that was so young and obviously had sex with him. So part of the issue here was discuss, where does this come from? Does one culture have a right to tell another culture what's right or wrong, which we do all the time in politics, as we know. Okay, in their culture, that's when a person got married. And they said, no, no 8 or 12-year-old girl there should ever marry and should have. I said, well, if you look at it from nature, she obviously was mature enough to have a baby. So nature said, it's okay. Why are we saying it's not okay? And it's certainly for the eons of that tribe, it was okay there. And if it were not for the fact that they couldn't prove, and by the way, it was consensual in the tribe, the girl had a right to say, I don't want whatever, and she
Hmm.
did like them.
Hmm.
And so again, it's to provoke thought. Do we have a right to
Right.
tell the cultures what's right, what's wrong? And it's certainly not an affront against nature if she she was at a mature level of physically mature to have children, to
Right.
conceive and have children. So we tackled questions like that again, so that we can look outside our own culture, our own background, our own teachings, uh, and not make judgments about other people and how they live, which we do all the time, of course, uh, judging other cultures and other people.
Right.
So, um, and that that opens up the discussions in the class about why we believe what we believe. How did that come about that we believe what we believe? Another example in that category
So
that we did. Go
just
ahead.
real quick, just real
Go
quick.
ahead.
Um, you not only open the discussion when you're having these kinds of conversations, you're opening minds, right? I mean I'm listening to you, and that in that situation, of course, instant the first reaction is the man's a pedophile, right? But the fact of the matter is, in the Amazon rainforest, it's nature at its finest and worst, right? I mean, and nature says this person is, naturally of age to procreate, right? And so,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, because that's where I went. And as you were talking, I'm like, oh, yeah, who the hell am I to judge,
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
right?
now you know
So,
and I don't judge your judgment. I just provoke thought. That's all.
right,
Critical
right. That's
course was heavy on critical thinking, and that's what I wanted uh, to get out of the students to get out of the course.
And boy, oh boy, does the world need more critical thinking or not, or what, right? When we're talking about critical thinking, we're not talking about thinking critically about other people. We're talking about thinking with analysis, right? And and uh, and it's not about criticism. It's not about being critical. It's about thinking critically about our thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Why do
makes
we
sense or not,
believe?
but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you were I want to get into the part about wealth and how you've created wealth and how you talk to people about creating wealth and teach them. But you said you had one more quick example that you were going to share.
That we studied in class too. Uh, it came from a book about called Identical Strangers. I think if I remember the title right, Identical Strangers, and it's about two. It was about twins who were adopted at birth, uh, uh, and by two different families. And one family didn't know about the other, et cetera. They were originally born in Mexico and adopted in the family. And one of a college student who was friends with one of them, actually friends with both of them, but he told one of them you're so much like my other friend who went to a different college in New York. They both went to college in New York City, one at NYU, and I can't remember the other one, what the
So this
college.
man knew both of them.
He knew both of them, and he said, "You're so much alike. You got to meet my friend." Whatever. Long story short, that they found out that they were biological twins, identical twin sisters. But one was raised in a Jewish family, one was raised in a Catholic family, and they were both deeply seated in their religions. So they were identical strangers here. And they, of course, got along, and they had like the same mannerisms and this and that, like we read about with the identical twins. But they were both deeply they both deeply believed in their religions. Okay, and that affected how they viewed life. And the point of that story, of course, is the same thing. There, uh, why do we believe what we believe? Okay, and we can ask questions and study about that. So, all right, now to answer your question about making money.
So just real quick
Go ahead.
about those identical twins.
Yes.
So what would what was interesting about what was interesting about that situation of how they grew up in different families with different religious beliefs? What's kind of the punchline to
The
why?
punchline,
Yeah,
the punchline to that is they had a lot of similarities besides their looks, their mannerisms, and this and that, but they were really separated by their strong beliefs in different religions. Okay, and the important thing of that is, okay. Now it reminds me too. I've been retired for a while, but so I don't think of everything. So one of the questions I would ask the students who themselves had deep beliefs. You know, we had Muslims, we had Christians, we had atheists, all that stuff. So this question I would ask them is this: if you were adopted out as an infant and raised by a family with entirely different beliefs than you have. A lot of them very strong Christians. Pepperdine attracts that because it's Christian university. So let's
Sure.
say you were adopted out as an infant into a Muslim family in Saudi Arabia. Do you think you would have the same beliefs that you have today?
Oh, I- you know, what a simple question that I have never thought of before. Wow. Yeah, and of course, of course, the answer is yes, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
would, of course, you'd be a different person. So
Yeah.
wow, that is wonderful. That is
The
wonderful.
importance of that, of course, is why do we believe what we believe? And, you know, to understand other people believe differently. And as a mediator and arbitrator, somebody who spent a long career in dispute resolution, I tell, and I believe this from my experience, that two people could have 180-degree different belief and both be right.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, it's just, you know, one of the things that just understanding and under what you've brought to this show is a realization, right? That we're not what we absolutely may think is right. I mean, Pepperdine University, Christian university, right? I mean, you got the whole spectrum of people of belief, of faith, who are extreme on either side, and very right. And some people, some people are everything is exactly this way. And if you don't do things this way, I talk to people all the time who are Christians and say, if you don't do these things, you're not going to go to heaven, right? And I'm like, really? And yet they are so set on their beliefs. And there's nothing that you use the example of those of the twins, right? There's nothing deeper of belief than faith. And
Yes.
so yeah, so thank you for that. All right, let's talk about wealth. Let's kind of shift gears here, and I'm
Okay.
just going to let you talk. Go.
Okay. One thing I want for your viewers, if they want, because I'm sure we just don't have enough time here. I tried to get a lot of what I taught in the class, and they were 4 hour long classes, by the way. I put it in a book called The Course. Okay, and it's called The Course, subtitled Acquiring Wealth, Power, Success, Morally and Ethically. And I write my books, they're basically autobiographical novels. And I write them as novels so that nobody gets offended and sues me. Okay. So,
That's yeah. Okay. Good. Good.
okay. So Pepperdine University is not called Pepperdine in the book, and, you know, people and so forth. Anyway, but a lot of the essence of what we're talking about is in that book, The Course, Acquiring Wealth, Power, Success, Morally and Ethically, AWPSME for short. Okay. So about wealth. And we studied a lot about how people acquired wealth. First of all, I had to define what wealth is. Okay. Well, so we
There
define
you
what wealth
go.
is, what power is, what success is. Okay. And we use as a measure of wealth that if your primary income stopped today, how long could you uh, go? How long could you last there with not having that income and maintain your current lifestyle? Okay, so that was the foundational definition of wealth for the class. And the
Okay.
importance of that too is to acquire wealth is a very simple uh, um, process there. You have to spend less than you make. Okay. So you live below
Yep.
your means, live below
Yes,
your,
sir.
okay, and save something and then invest what you're saving. So, and of course, as I said, we don't have time for everything here, but I gave many examples of people that had never earned more than minimum wage in their life who acquired millions of dollars by living below their means and investing the money afterwards. I don't care if it's only $2 a month or something. Uh, you have to save something so that money can work for you later. As I said, the
Yes.
money is a perfect partner there. It works 24/7 and doesn't complain. Okay. So, because people always say, well, it's too expensive. I have to know, there were times I slept in my car when I had, minimum wage jobs and I saved money. I always, ever since I was in high school, I always had a separate account, which I tell the students to do. Open a separate account and send money separate from your checking account in the bank and send money to that separate account and forget that it's there. And then when you have enough money in there, you can make some investments. And so some of the exercises that I would do towards that is I would have them not spend 1 cent for a day. And they'd have to come back the next class and tell about their experience of not spending 1 penny for a day. At first, I thought that it would not go over well. They loved it because they all of a sudden were aware that life can go on without spending money. And corollary to that is I had them write down everything they spent for a day. For example, and I had guest speakers in the class, and one of them was a very wealthy man, and he came in and said, when I married my wife, she was addicted to Starbucks. Every day she spent $7, $8 at Starbucks. He said, so we didn't have money at the time, he said. So I told her, he said, if you give up Starbucks for 1 year, he said, I'll invest that money and you will never have to pay for another Starbucks for the rest of your life because of what the investment would return. And that's the concept that we had in how to acquire wealth. Okay. And I also, there's another book there that was written by an accountant in Australia that a friend of mine who lives in Australia turned me on to. It's called How to Give Each of Your Children $1 million and It Won't Cost You 1 cent. And it sounds like a catchy title, but if you follow that book, which anybody can do, I don't care what job you have and how big, if you have 8 kids to support, if you follow that, that's exactly what you can do.
What's the name of that book?
It's called, let's see if I get the title. It's close to this anyway. How to Give Each of Your Children $1 million and It Won't Cost You 1 cent.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Um,
So a
and
couple
it's
of things. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
in the
Dennis.
course too. So people can't remember that, they can buy my book and that's covered in there. So then we get into, and I'll get back to your questions. This is all part of it. When it came to power, what is power? Okay, it's not power to dominate other people. It's the power to change your own life. Okay, have
So
the
personal power.
yeah, how to change your life there, how to make changes in your life. That's power.
And this is
And
what we're talking about right now. This
yeah,
with this Finding Better podcast.
yes,
It's the power to
and
make changes.
yeah, and I introduced them to the tools of meditation and mantra, and I would bring in professors from other colleges that taught in the religion division of different colleges, UCLA, SC, that taught meditation and use of mantra as tools that you can use to change your life. And I myself, I'm a meditator, I started meditating in 1976 and have not missed. I meditate for a half hour every day in the morning, and I've never missed one day since 1976. And that gives me the tools, and I use mantra too. and and here's how I explain mantra
Hmm.
to the students, and I would give them some tools too, but to help them remember it. I said, what if I could tell you, if you came to me and say, Professor, I got a terrible headache today. And what if I told you, John, I can take your headache away in 10 seconds? And you'd say, how's that? I said, well, what if I took my foot and I stomped as hard as I could onto your foot? Would you still have the headache?
Yeah.
Okay. So the point I was making is mantra is a tool, and a mantra is just a spiritual saying, or if you're not into spiritual, it could be any word, okay, that you like, blue sky, or Jesus, or whatever is meaningful to you. And this is a simplified version of what we do in the class. And the concept is that the mind can only concentrate on one thing at a time, contrary to the belief of multitasking. You
Right.
really can do one thing at a time. And so instead of the analogy of stomping on your foot is now you're concentrating on the pain in your foot and the headache is gone. The mantra is the same thing. You concentrate on the mantra instead of what the thought that you have that you don't want or that's not beneficial to you.
And
Okay, and meditation is another form of being of getting rid of the thoughts and emptying the mind, so to speak, by concentrating on something else until uh, you're free of those thoughts.
and
So that gets
how do people choose their mantra?
well, I recommended a couple of books, and those are also in the course. I have recommendations in there, books on meditation and mantra books. Uh, First, you can take it from your spiritual background. For instance, if you're a Christian, you might say something Jesus, 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 or if you're Jewish, Baruch atah Adonai, God is great, or
Hmm.
Allah Akbar, God is great in the Islamic religion.
And
Or if you're not,
are you repeating that?
yes,
Are you saying that? Or and
yes,
and
you
okay,
repeat it. And again, like any tool, you get better with practice. Okay.
sure.
Let's say you have a headache and you start saying Jesus, 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 or God is great, or it's a beautiful
Hmm.
day, or I'm wonderful, or whatever it is. And you're shifting your thought from the headache to that thought. Okay, and with practice, and the same thing, you can use it all day. You're standing in line to get into a concert, and your feet are hurting, your back is hurting, whatever. You can shift into your mantra and not be aware that your back is hurting and your feet are hurting. If you're impatient, for somebody and you find yourself stressing out, because you feel you're impatient and you feel you've been disrespected, you can shift your thought to another process. This gives you the power to change your life. So you don't have the anxiety, you don't have the anger, okay, and you can choose how you react, which was another part of the course too. You cannot choose what comes into your life. Okay,
Right.
but you can
You
choose
can't
how you
choose
react to
how
it.
you react to it. Yep.
Exactly.
So is this as simple as, I mean, I don't want to oversimplify something, but meditation and mantra is a key to personal power.
Yes, yes. You
This is
have
what
to
you're
have
saying.
you have to have a tool that allows you to uh, change how you react to something.
And clear your mind.
Yes, and clear your mind. Exactly.
Clear your mind and clear your heart.
Yeah.
And um, okay, well, here's the thing. You keep saying that we don't have enough time. We can always make more time because I'd love to have you
Okay.
back.
Okay.
Because you've really simplified a lot of things, and it, I mean, we complicate life, don't we? I mean, it's just
Yes.
crazy. I want to go back to a couple of things on your wealth conversation. One of the things that you said was you define wealth. That's one of the first things you do.
Yes.
And I encourage everybody out there to define wealth because you know what? I mean, define wealth as in terms of monetary terms, but also define wealth on what everything else you have in terms of everything else you have in your life. I look at, I'm a big study of people, and I have read and learned and studied people who are fabulously wealthy monetarily, and they're absolutely miserable.
Yes.
They're absolutely miserable. And yet at the same time, I mean, you can think about that tribe in the Amazon rainforest. There's a lot of happy people in there, right?
Absolutely.
And so wealth isn't just about money. I tell people, and this is not an egotistical thing or anything like that, but I don't know anybody who's wealthier than I am. I honestly don't, because I measure wealth not only by money but by love, by my family, by my relationships, by my friends, by everything else I have in my life. And so I'm encouraging all you folks to also think about the other elements of wealth in your life that you have in abundance, and maybe you just don't realize that you have it. Um, Second thing, and I have one more after this, but what you said about living within your means, and
Yes.
what you said about how you know people who have minimum wage people who have built wealth, their financial wealth, into millions and millions of dollars. I mean, for a lot of you folks out there, that ought to make your head just go, right? It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep and how much you invest. Because if you're making $500,000 a year and you're spending $500,001 a year, you're broke. You're not
Exactly.
wealthy, right? Is that right, Dennis?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
if the income stopped, that's the definition. If the income stopped, how long could you maintain your lifestyle? And some
Yeah,
people
yeah.
might have $1 billion. If they're spending more than $1 billion, they don't last long. If you're living below your means, you might be able to go on for years. Okay.
Yeah. Now here's something for you along those lines. I just did a short video about money. In fact, I just did a John Talk, Finding Better episode on AI, money, and jobs. And one of the things I mentioned in it, Dennis, is that 61% of the American population is in credit card debt.
Yes.
And the average credit card debt is over $7,300. Average, right?
Yeah.
And that tells you that 61% of our population is not living within their means, right? And I mentioned that when you think about $7,300 in credit card debt and they're charging you 29% interest, that's over $2,000 a year that you're paying the bank that you should be paying yourself. And if you did clear out, and I tell people, if you got 7,300, if you got credit card debt, go dig ditches, go get a side job, go do whatever you got to do. There's all kind, get rid of it, and then take that money you would otherwise have paid the bank for nothing and pay yourself. And that money, if you do that every year, you know this, Dennis, you take $2,100 and save it every single year, you're putting away, and you're putting it into, I don't know, the S&P 500, and that's given an 8% historical return on investment. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of 30 years.
Yeah.
Just by paying yourself instead of paying those stupid banks. And
Yeah. And
so
it's how what you're buying too. you know, I would ask some of your viewers on this, and again, I cover this in the book too. Look at what you're spending. How many people, if you go to a grocery store, as I do, and you look at what people, I see people making minimum wage at the grocery store, and they're covered with tattoos, which are not cheap. Okay. And,
Right.
and they're buying alcohol, okay,
Oh,
and they're buying junk food, okay. So, and they say, well, I want to, well, as you experience too, a lot of people are just not aware how they spend their money.
right.
People tell me they save up for a year to go to a Taylor Swift concert or something. I have no problem with if that's what you want, but to spend $1,000 for a ticket or something like that, and with the attitude, you only live once, or if you look how people go on vacations, they say I'm going to go on a cruise, but look at the how cruise ships advertise. They've got they say we have 18 restaurants, we have a casino, we have a theater, and we you get 4 meals a day and snacks anytime you want, and all the booze. Uh, those people that I've met, they come back from those cruises. They have to get into rehab. Okay, it's all about stimulation. It's not about
Yeah.
finding what really makes you happy and living simply and comfortable. Look, I live in Malibu. I have all the creature comforts I want, but I, I spend probably, I don't know, 10 or 20% of my income. Okay. And it's not, and I live frugally, but yet I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of the toys in life and a lot of experience in life, but I'm happy walking along the beach each day. Okay. I don't need to go out and spend a lot. And even though I can afford just about everything, I don't need this stuff. That I enjoy spending time with my wife and my friends and cooking. I can eat out of restaurants every single day and not miss a cent, but I'd much rather cook. I do eat in restaurants, of course, but I'd
And
much
and
cook.
when you do that, how much money do you save by cooking for yourself? Right?
Oh,
I mean, just
yeah,
the average lunch is 14 bucks. And
exactly.
take your lunch to work, folks. But I want to caution the folks who are listening and watching, right? Because Dennis just said, I spend 25% of my income. And do not get stuck in the trap that says, yeah, but look at how much money he makes. I reflect you back to what Dennis just said about people who are making minimum wage ending up building millions of dollars in wealth. Okay.
And that's
So
sacrifice.
Dennis's point is not, look at me, I only have to spend 25% of my income. That's not his point. His point is, you know what? If you live frugally and you live simply, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. But it's self-control, it's understanding, taking the time to learn about money, and and oh my gosh, your life can change on a dime.
You said the
So
point there. Learn about money. Okay, what money is, how you spend. And I think I started saying this before. When I asked the students not to spend 1 cent for a day, I thought that they wouldn't like it. And I told them, by the way, you can plan for it, fill your car up with gas if you have to, but if you forget to fill it up and you run out, well, tough luck. Don't spend any money. And the same thing with food, whatever. They loved it. All my students loved the experience. They said, we, they said we were supposed to go out to the movies. And I said, no, remember now we weren't supposed to spend any money. So we spent the evening at home watching TV. That it was so much better. And you can think about that, getting in the car, driving there,
that's
finding,
amazing. Yeah.
getting, waiting in line. They found it enormously enjoyable experience. And the same when I asked them to write down every penny that they spent for a day, they weren't aware how much they spent on nothing. They buy a Starbucks a venti, big one, throw a quarter of it away or something in the trash. In fact, the students would often come in with, in the beginning of these classes with Starbucks. And I said, coffee's free here at the student lounge. You just spent $7, $8, whatever it was. And I said, and it's not 7 or 8 bucks because you have to earn more to end up with a net of 7 or 8 bucks.
Yep.
That was
Exactly.
one thing too. I
Exactly.
asked them, okay, I'll ask you, what is more valuable, a penny earned or a penny saved?
Yeah, go. Go.
Okay. And the answer, of course, I get the different thoughts in the classroom. I say it's a penny saved. Why? Because a penny earned, you have to pay tax on. It's not a penny.
Exactly. 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 And remember, folks, it's not that wealth is not about how much money you make. It's about
Yeah,
how much money you keep, right? And
exactly.
try it. Folks, try it. Try not to spend a single penny. Just one day. Try it. Try it. And on another day, write down everything you spent. Just one day. We're talking about 2 days. 2 days. That's it. Right? Try it. You may learn a lot about yourself and a lot about how you do things. Dennis, this has been amazing. I have so enjoyed this conversation. And here's the thing. Here's the thing, folks. Okay, we talked a lot. We talked about David's experiences. We talked about critical thinking. And rewind, whatever you do, go back. I don't want to say rewind the tape because that's just going to age me. But anyway, go back and listen to some of these things again about critical thinking and about, folks, there is no such thing as right and wrong. And Dennis just made his case on that. And then we talked about building wealth and kind of a mindset shift. But it's not only a mindset shift, it's an awareness shift, right? And we've given you some things to think about. And so, Dennis, your book that's out, what is it called? And yeah, what's your book called again?
Okay, the one that we've been discussing today is called The Course by Dennis Torres, Torres. You can get it anywhere, but Amazon is the easiest place. Just go to Amazon and put in The Course by Dennis Torres. And I have four other books out too, but you'll see there, all my books have the same theme, and that is I want to entertain, educate, and provoke thought.
That's
Uh,
wonderful.
Okay, and one of them is about my trip to the Amazon and living in the Amazon. Another is about my experiences as a soldier in Vietnam, but it's not a battle scene type thing, although there's things there. It's more about the same thing, educate and provoke thought. And then there's one that covers four of the jobs I had during the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, where I was a mailman, a letter carrier in Santa Monica. I was an outrep for the phone company in the Black Ghetto of Los Angeles. And I ran the merry-go-round on the Santa Monica Pier for a couple of years. And then I wrote for a magazine, a newspaper, covering the hottest rock bands of the era. And all those experiences were against the backdrop of culture and learning.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So, folks, if you just go to Amazon and you type in Dennis Torres, Torres, you'll see his books. You'll see his books. So, with that, Dennis, this has been amazing. Perhaps I should be calling you professor, but you've lived an amazing life, and God bless you for sharing your experiences and teaching others how they can learn from your experiences to make a better life for themselves, right? Um,
Yes.
so thank you, and I would love to have you back sometime.
Any,
It'd be wonderful. It'd be an honor to have you back. I love you. God bless you. Thank you again for joining me. All of you out there, I love you. God bless you. I hope you take something from this, and remember, right? Whether you buy Dennis's books or not is not the point. You got amazing stuff by listening to this podcast episode. And Dennis has given us tons and tons and tons to think about. all of which is incredibly simple. Okay, so with that, do it, check it out, apply it to your own life, and we'll see you next time. Bye.